right, I think we're here. Yeah. All right, bet. So Blizzard, I think the other day released 12 new hero talents for people to check out for different classes. I did not get a chance to look at Deathbringer yet. I have done my best to really not look at it until I got a chance to either record or stream. I haven't looked at anyone who I subscribe to on like social media. Haven't looked at their reviews yet because I really want to get my own opinion before I started looking at others and kind of getting like not necessarily forced but influenced. So I'm gonna treat this stream kind of like a blog type deal. Not necessarily. I guess I could have recorded this, but I'd rather stream it because I'm gonna start doing Cataclysm beta leveling too, and we're gonna talk about SoD stuff. But I want to start off by going over the hero talents for the Deathbringer style of play for DK, and this is shared by the Blood and the Frost tree. So the Sand Lane tree was shared by Holy and Blood. This is Frost and Blood. So we have both builds for the Blood DK. Like we have both of the hero talents that we can see, we can compare, we can contrast. And I didn't like officially review the Sand Lane tree, but I did read through it. I watched people, and I like it. I like the Sand Lane tree. I think it has an effective feedback loop, albeit it's kind of boring, right? Because it's just promoting hard strike spam, which really isn't the most compelling gameplay, but everything works. And I think that's probably gonna, that's what most of these hero talents are probably gonna live and die off of. Like the first node, the very first choice node, opposite of the capstone, should be the focal point. Then you have the supporting talents, and then the end should be the driving force that redirects back to the focal point, right? And I've seen, I think I looked at not all because I didn't see the rogue one, and I don't think I looked at the monks one, but I've seen a lot of the hero talents that they released, and for the most part, they do that. I think one of the more lackluster ones that I've seen and that I looked at, and I kind of agree with the community on, is the shaman one, the farseer, that's shared between Ellie and Resto. I feel like the they built up the ancestor thing, but the payoff at the end of the talent tree isn't the greatest to me, to be quite honest. I think that one's probably going to go back to the drawing board, and that's kind of what these talents are probably going to live and die off of. When it comes to the choice nodes, the choices got to be compelling. It can't be a quiz; it actually has to be a choice. And I saw that with, I'm trying to think what tree it was. I think it might have been the monk tree, where some of them just look like, oh, this is just straight up better than this. So, granted, these are early looks, right? We're still, some ways out from War Within releasing, so things can change. Everything that Blizzard has released thus far can be completely changed and revamped once the game comes out. So take what you see with a grain of salt, whether it be from me or from somebody else. But that's enough preface. Let's talk about Deathbringer. So, the Deathbringer tree starts with Reaper's Mark. And let's see. So, it's a 2-rune ability, costs 2 runes on a 1-minute CD. Viciously slice into the soul of your enemy, dealing Shadow Frost damage, applying Reaper's Mark. Each time you deal Shadow or Frost damage, you add a stack of Reaper's Mark. After 12 seconds or reaching 40 stacks, the mark explodes, dealing damage per stack. So obviously, the point of this is to get 40 stacks. You don't want it to just naturally fall off before 40 stacks if it's doing damage per stack. Then it says Reaper's Mark travels to an unmarked enemy nearby if the target dies or explodes below 35% when there are no enemies to travel to. So if the enemy is below 35%, it travels to an unmarked enemy if the target dies, or it explodes below 35% if there are no enemies to travel to. Okay, this can occur once every 3 minutes. I'm guessing that 3-minute thing is really for that specific traveling effect. It's not for the second paragraph, like that second. So it's not a paragraph, but that second line of text where it says each time you do Shadow Frost damage, you add a stack. That's what I'm guessing. Like it's gonna explode once you hit 40 stacks, and that explosion is not on a 3-minute cooldown. That's what I see there. The traveling part, that's the part that's on the 3 minute cooldown. Um, at face value, it's not a bad ability. It costs 2 runes. It's on a 1 minute CD. 1 minute CDs always feel kind of good, like especially in like Mythic Plus where each new pack grants a use of this ability. So I'm not mad at it. I wish there was a little bit more AOE, but I'm guessing that's probably gonna come in some form of the talents here. But I mean, at face value, it's not bad. All right, let's go down here. Wave of Souls. Reaper's Mark unleash a dark wave. Oh, that's the AoE. Okay, guess I should have shut up before I read this. Anyway, Reaper's Mark unleashes a dark wave towards your target and back, dealing Shadow Frost damage both ways to all enemies caught within its path. Wave of Soul critical strikes cause the enemies to take 5% increased Shadow Frost damage and stacks 2 times. Okay, so 10%. And the wave coming back always deals a critical strike. That's not bad. So this immediately answers my AoE question about Reaper's Mark. The thing I would question about this particular talent node is how wide the wave is. Like if it's it could be like from left to right or, across, like, could it be like, is it like 3 yards across? Is it 6 yards across? That's what I would want to know about this particular talent node. But I mean, it's cool. It gives Shadow Frost damage. So I'm imagining since it's doing Shadow Frost damage, it's going to contribute to adding a stack of Reaper's Mark, because it looks like you're trying to get 40 stacks to get to the explosion. That seems to be what the driving force of this is. You want to get 40 stacks to get to the explosion, and once you explode, obviously it does a lot of damage. I'm assuming as we go down this tree, the explosion is going to do other stuff, right? So because getting rid of the Reaper's Mark probably should trigger something else. So I'm just saying, right? If you're working to get rid of it, and once it happens, it probably does something else on the fly. But anyway, this Wave of Souls is pretty cool, right? I mean, it's simple. The way it's worded, it says Reaper's Mark unleashes a dark wave. So it sounds like once you apply it, it does it. Like it is no chance to do it. It just straight up sends out a wave once you do it. And this Wave of Souls Shadow Frost damage should apply the Reaper's Mark effect, like the marking effect. And it looks like if it crits, they take more Shadow Frost damage. So that's, pretty cool, simplistic, easy to use. Don't really got to think about it too much. I like it. Why not? Let's go across. So Blood Fever. Your Blood Plague has Your Blood Plague has a chance to deal 30% increased damage of Shadow Frost damage. And if you're Frost, same thing with Frost Fever. Okay, so that's, again, more driving forces for getting more stacks. So 30% chance on your Blood Plague. I mean, Blood Plague obviously is just up all the time for us, so I'm not mad at it. 30% increased damage at Shadow Frost. So does it replace a tick, or I don't know how that works. But, I mean, it's just a 30% chance to add another stack of Reaper's Mark. That's how I look at that. A Bind in Darkness. Shadow Frost damage applies double stacks to Reaper's Mark and quadruple stacks when it's a crit. Oh, that's going to make Wave of Souls crazy, right? Because if it does... Okay. So let's play this out real quick. So if you apply Reaper's Mark, boom, it should immediately send out a wave. That wave, a non-crit, because it's Shadow Frost damage as per Binding Darkness, it's going to apply two stacks. If it crits, it's going to apply 4 stacks. And if it crits on the way out and on the way back, since on the way back it's already a guaranteed crit, you could get 8 stacks of Reaper's Mark in one application. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. I'm not mad at that. Let's see. So yeah, Shadow Frost damage just applying double or quadruple if it crits. That's not bad. If you're Frost, Rhyme Power, Howling Blast, Steel Shadow Frost, and Blood Boil Blood. Okay. Oh yeah, so you can stack this up stupid easy. Okay. All right. I'm not mad at this. So that makes me want this. Like, there's got to be some CDR in this, because you can literally, like I said, if you put up Reaper's Mark and you get a crit on the way out from Wave of Souls and a crit on the way back, boom, that's 8 stacks, right? If your Blood Boil crits, boom, now that Blood Boil is dealing Shadow Frost damage just at all times, that's also going to be 4 stacks. Like, you could potentially get just a massive amount of stacks rip off of a few GCDs. I'm not mad at that. And then you still have Blood Plague, with its 30% chance of applying a stack. Yeah, that's dope. This is dope. All right, moving on. Shuddering Soul. Reaper's Mark explosion causes a piece of the target soul to tear out and spiral outwards, dealing 10% of the explosion's damage to enemies it passes through. Enemies hit by this effect deal 5% reduced physical damage to you for 10 seconds. It doesn't say what type of damage this Shuddering Soul does, so I don't know. I would assume it's Shadow Frost, but it might not be. It could just be Shadow, or it could even just be physical. But the explosion, wait, actually, no, it's the explosion. It causes explosion to your soul. So let's see. It also doesn't say what type of damage the Reaper's Mark explosion is. I would assume it's considered Shadow or Frost or just Shadow Frost damage. So here you have another chance of just naturally applying Reaper's Mark or the stacking effect just by just by passive play, right? Because you're getting stacks, you're adding stacks to Reaper's Mark. When it explodes, it does a little tornado, which might look cool, might not look cool. I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with Death Knight animations. Some like the Frost DK animations look great, but then like Blood basically has no animations. Like it's crazy. Like I don't know how in 2024 we still don't have an animation, a visual for Blood Shield. Mind-boggling. But anyway, yeah, this is just nice passive thing you ain't gotta really think about. Next talent, Grim Reaper. Reaper's Mark explosion deals up to 30% increased damage based on your target's missing HP. It's not bad. And applies Soul Reaper to the targets below 35%. I'm not mad at this, especially because I've been a primary Mythic Plus person for, basically all of Dragonflight, pretty much. And we really haven't got a chance to really use Soul Reaper in Mythic Plus. Like, it's more of a rating talent. So I'm happy that we probably don't have to take Soul Reaper for this to apply Soul Reaper. I'm going to assume that. But I'm not mad at this. I like it. I like it a lot. And then we come up to our first choice node. We have the choice between Death's Bargain and Rune Carved Plates. 1 second, I'm going to take a swig. Alright. So, Death's Bargain. When you're suffering a damaging effect equal to 25% of your max health, you instantly cast Death Pack at 50% effectiveness, make her 2. That's kind of doo-doo. That's kind of trash. Death Pack is already a weak ability, so getting it at half its effectiveness really does more harm than good, in my opinion. It does more harm than good because Death Pack puts a heal absorb on you. So if you get this at the wrong time and you think, hey, I'm about to death strike something, I'm about to heal back. Wait a minute, Death Pack just proc. Now I got to get through this heal absorb. And then it's on a 2-minute CD. It's like that's like too long for a weak ability. So that one I don't really like that. That's bargain. Let's read the second part. When a Reaper's Mark explodes, the cooldowns of this effect and Death Pack are reduced. No one's taking Death Pack, so who cares? Yeah, I don't like that one. Rune Carved Plates. Each rune spent reduces the magic damage you take by 2%, and each rune generated reduces the physical damage you take by 2%. Stacks 5 times. So that's just by and large better. Death Knight, Blood doesn't. Blood doesn't have runic empowerment or runic corruption, so generating runes really only come by way of like if you talent into Blood Tap or if you're using Empower Rune Weapon, which you should be. So Rune Carved Plates might be a little bit harder to get if you're not taking Blood Tap, but this is still better than because you're spending runes, so you take basically magic reduction. So yeah, Rune Carved Plates is just better. It's just better than Death's Bargain. And if you have to use Blood Tap, so be it. Like Blood DK talents are pretty locked in, but there's definitely ways to get Blood Tapped, right? We have the ability to do it, but we've been using the same talents for so long that it might feel a little weird especially to like force feed the Rune Carved Plates ability. Maybe in War Within, Blood gets access to either runic empowerment or runic corruption. That would be the most ideal situation. It even has, like, if you look at it, it even has like the runic corruption icon. But yeah, Rune Carved Plates is just by and large better than Death's Bargain. Unless they like completely change and buff Death's Pack, no one's gonna take that, to be quite honest. I don't even think that's good in like PvP. So, because no one wants just a random heal absorb on them. Like, I don't know. All right, now we have basically the 3 choice nodes, or the last remaining ones are choice nodes. So let's look at it. Swift's End. Reaper's Mark cost is reduced by 1 rune, and its cooldown is reduced by 50%. Whoa, wait a minute. Wait. Reaper's Mark cost is reduced by 1 rune, so it goes from 2 to 1 and reduced by 50%. So 30-second cooldown. That's basically like whatever Painful Death is, and I haven't read it, but it better be damn good because Swift End is phenomenal. It's the best talent we've read thus far. Painful Death. Reaper's Mark now explodes at 50 stacks, and the first Scythe of Exterminate has a 100% increased chance to apply Reaper's Mark. So I'm assuming I gotta know what Exterminate does for me to really weigh in on Painful Death, because at face value, Swift End is just by and large better. So what I'll do is I'll immediately go to Exterminate. I'll see what it does, and then we can kind of gauge from there, because it ain't looking too good for Painful Death. I'm gonna be real with y'all. All right, so Exterminate. After Reaper's Mark explodes, your next Morrowind or Obliterate costs no rune and summons 2 scythes. The first scythe strikes your target for physical damage and has a 15% chance to apply Reaper's Mark. The second scythe strikes all enemies around you for Shadowfrost damage, which would also apply Reaper's Mark, right? Because, or apply a stack of Reaper's Mark, because each time you do a Shadowfrost, yeah. So both of them apply it. But Painful Death only activates on the okay, hold on. So Painful Death, Reaper's Mark stacks to 50, so it'll do more damage. The first scythe has a 100% increased chance. So not 100% chance, 100% increased chance, so that goes from 15 to 30. Okay. So the first scythe has a 30% chance to apply Reaper's Mark, and Reaper's Mark now stacks at 50. Versus Reaper's Mark cost being reduced by 1, cost and cooldown being reduced by 50%. So all right, so Painful Death is more compelling when you look at it under the hood. Like it's a much more compelling choice, because stacking up to 50 means more damage, obviously, and giving this Exterminate thing, like, so after explodes your next Morrowind. Well, all right, so here's what I'll say about this. Because the explosion again is the catalyst for all this shit happening, right? Painful Death turning Reaper's Mark into a 30-second CD, in my opinion, with this iteration of, Swift End turning into a 30-second CD. I know I said Painful Death. Swift End turning it into a 30-second CD is still better than Painful Death. Now, in some instances, it might not net the most damage, because Painful Death still gives you 10 extra additional stacks of Reaper's Mark to stack up to, and it increases the chance that you'll apply it through Exterminate. So it might not always be the best choice DPS wise, but I think simplistically it's going to do enough, and it's completely passive. You ain't got to think about it for it to be the driving force. Like normally super strong passive talents are normally just taken because a player can just execute their rotations and react to things better and just play better when they don't have to think about how talents are interacting with their abilities and so on and so forth. And Swift End does that perfectly. I don't know if Painful Death is going to be as fluid as using Swift End, right? So that's how I feel about that. But it's a deeper choice than what it appears to be, right? All right, so let's look at the next one. So we have Dark Talons and Wither Away. So Dark Talons, while Icy Talons is active, your abilities that spend runic power deal Shadowfrost damage. So basically Death Strike, and I guess Death Coil, but basically Death Strike for blood anyway. And then we look down. Morrowind and Heartstrike have a 20% chance to increase the maximum stacks of Icy Talons by 1 up to 2 times. Okay, so you attack faster, right? And your Death Strikes deal Shadowfrost damage, which applies Reaper's Mark. That's pretty damn good. That's really, really good, actually. Really, really good. We're always using Death Strike, so we're always spending runic power. I would imagine this works for when you're using Dancing Rune Weapon and you're casting Death Strike too. I would imagine that works. It doesn't. I mean, technically speaking, the Dancing Rune Weapon don't generate. They generate runic power, but not for themselves, for you. So when you spend runic power on Death Strike, it's not like they're spending from their own pool. So I don't know how that would work. But because they're also casting Death Strike, which is a rune spending ability, it just might proc this Shadowfrost damage. So who knows? We'll see about that one. But I'm not mad at Dark Talons. That's pretty cool. Wither Away. Blood Plague deals its damage in half its time, and the second Scythe of Exterminate applies Blood Plague. Yeah, I'm not mad at like these talents kind of separating the sides from Exterminate. That's actually kind of cool. All right. So Blood Plague deals its damage in half the time. So that's just more ticks, which I guess are more chances for it to do Shadowfrost damage, right? And the second Scythe applies Blood Plague. Huh. and the second sight strikes all enemies, dealing Shadow Frost damage. So the second sight basically is applying more. Okay. I still think Dark Talons is better than this because Blood Plague just ticking down faster is cool, but it's not, to me, it's not as good as auto attack speed faster. Like, so your auto attacks are faster, so that means more procs for Crimson Scourge, and your big runic power spender, Death Strike, is doing Shadow Frost damage. Like, I mean, that's pretty damn good. So I think Dark Talons is the winner here. But Wither Away, I guess, isn't that bad, but it's, I don't know. Dark Talons doesn't have much AoE applications, but we got Shattering Bone for that. We don't really need to, I don't know. I feel like Death Knight AoE isn't bad. Like, we're pretty good in the AoE department. So yeah, I like Dark Talons for this one. And then the next one, the last choice node we have to go over is between Death's Messenger and Expelling Shield. So Death's Messenger reduces the cooldowns of Lichborn and Raise Dead by 30 seconds. That's very simple, but very effective. Reducing the cooldown on a pretty strong defensive for Blood and a pretty strong offensive for Blood is really good. So I'm not mad at either of those. Expelling Shield, when an enemy deals direct damage to your anti-magic shell, their cast speed is reduced by 10%. Blizzard, come on. Like, I know these values aren't set in stone, but come on, 10%. That was like, even if the values aren't set in stone, y'all should have lied. Y'all should have said that shit was 20%. Come on, man. Like 10%. Nobody's going to think about that. Death's Messenger is better in every single aspect of WoW, whether it's Mythic Plus, rating, PvP. That's a horrible. That's not even a. See, this is what I'm talking about when you're looking at talents. The difference between choices and quizzes. A quiz, there's a right and there's a wrong answer. There's clearly a right and a wrong answer here. There's no choice here. You're gonna pick Death's Messenger all the time, without question. Without question. And it's like direct damage. Like, when enemies deal direct damage. So in PvP, like, it has to be something direct. So if you have dots ticking on you, I don't think anti-magic shell is going to take care of that. Like, it won't even proc this. Like, yeah. And even if it is 10%, like, the caster loses, what, 1/10 of a second on their casting speed? Like, yeah, like, Expelling Shield is trash. I hope that doesn't release that way. I feel like it won't. I feel like that won't. I feel like Swift End probably won't be 50% by the time War Within comes out. I see like a 15 to 20-ish, high in 25%. I don't see it just straight up reducing this by half because it's always going to be the go-to pick. Even when it's not the better pick, it'll be the better pick, if that makes sense. So looking at this as a whole, the whole feedback loop between applying Reaper's Mark, getting it to stack, and then exploding, and then the exploding being the catalyst for a couple of other things, which just makes you want to reapply Reaper's Mark. That's pretty good. And I think, like I said, Swift End is going to be that driving force because having the cost and the cooldown means more explosions, means more of everything, basically. So yeah, I'm not mad at this. And I feel like because a lot of this stuff, even if it doesn't explicitly say it does Shadow or Frost damage, will probably do either Shadow or Frost or Shadow Frost damage, which means you're going to stack this up even faster, which means you're going to get more explosions, which actually kind of makes an argument for Painful Death. If you're stacking things faster, get 50 stacks, get more damage, and the first sight just has a straight up chance to apply Reaper's Mark. You don't have to wait for the CD. That's not bad. So, yeah, I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at this talent build at all. One thing about Blood DK, and I know this shit's with Frost, but I'm only talking about Blood, is that its damage has always been kind of lost in the sauce. Like, Blood DK has never really been the best damage dealing tank spec, and I know I get it, tank damage is relative, no one really cares, whatever, but if you're a super competitive, whether it's rating or Mythic Plus, if you're super competitive as a tank, you want to do the most damage, you want to push the boss faster. Like, more damage, more pushing means less things that have to happen to you. So increasing, Blood's tank damage is really good. It doesn't really fix any of the like concerns or issues that Blood normally has, like being kind of tied or tethered to Death and Decay. It's, it's damage taken on pull or on, mob encounter. But I heard Limit Max say this, or Liquid Max, my bad, and I agree with him. And the fact that if they ever fix the weakness of Blood DK being weak on pull or when it's at low resources, then it just becomes the best defensive tank ever in the game, and it can't die. Because once you get into the rhythm of Blood DK, like once you get into your feedback loop, your rhythm, when you have resources and Bone Shield is up and things are going, you cannot die. That strike will just heal you no matter what kind of damage you take, whether it's physical, whether it's magic, whether it's dot damage, whether it's whatever. It's going to heal you. It does not care. So if they fix that one weakness, then Death Knight just becomes the best defensive tank in the game by and large, without even questioning. So I don't think they're ever going to fix that. That's kind of the thing that kind of keeps Death Knight in line with all of the other tanks. So defensively, of course. But I mean, yeah, Deathbringer's cool. Deathbringer's cool. Do I like this more than Sand Lane? I feel like Sand Lane has a better feedback loop, and it's tied together more concisely than this one is, because the first talent node in the Sand Lane tree is Vampiric Strike, and then you have the supportive talents, and then at the end you have the not the essence of the Blood Queen. What is it called? Let me just look at it real quick. Gift of Sand Lane, which gives you it increases the buff that the Vampiric Strike gives, and it just completely transforms your Heart Strike into Vamp Strike, which fuels all of the other talents that you just took, including Vamp Strike. So I think Vamp Strike will probably be more fluid and more concise in use. It'll just be a boring playstyle because it'll just be Heart Strike spam. Whereas Deathbringer will be more, it'll feel better to play because you're using a couple of different abilities and things are happening. And once the explosion happens, you're getting all of these other things happening. But it might not feel as fluid, if that makes sense. But I think I like it. I like Deathbringer. It is what it is. This was cool to look at. This was really dope to look at. Really dope to look at. I guess I could hop on the Cata beta now and like really just kind of talk about SoD stuff while I'm playing Cata, right? Like I should be farming, but I'm kind of sick of farming. Like I'm farming Mage Weave till my eyes bleed, and I'm over it. So I'm sick of farming. So let's jump on the Cataclysm beta. And let's talk about SoD stuff, because I feel like SoD is going to, if Blizzard doesn't change anything, it's going to come to it's going to have to make some interesting choices. Hold on one second. Alright. I guess I could turn. Yeah, I don't really need the camera anymore. Like, y'all saw my beautiful face. That's about it. I can now see more of the screen. You don't really need to see me. I'm not even that important. But, yeah. So let's talk about SOD. Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the hopeful, right? Because there's a couple of things I'm kind of hoping for. So let's talk about the good. And this is kind of going to be like a quick retrospect. I might do a full retrospect video at some point. Who am I supposed to be talking to? But this is going to be kind of like a quick retrospect on the first two phases, what could happen in phase 3 and 4, what should happen, and how does Blizzard move forward and all that other stuff. So in phase 1, I think that was probably the most successful thing that Blizzard has done in a long time, because SOD came at a point where there was kind of a void to be filled. Like hardcore was in full swing. Like hardcore had kind of got its popularity. Oh, what the hell is going on here? It's Fight Club. Hardcore got its popularity through the add-on, right? If you played the add-on, if you were playing just on era servers and you got the add-on, you kind of like it created its own game, right? And then Blizzard kind of jumped on that and was like, "Yo, we're gonna make an official version. Like this is our thing. We're gonna make an official version," and people liked it. Like it to this day, it creates a play style that cannot be mimicked by any other version of WoW, either prior existing or currently existing, right? Because it has damn near an infinite feedback loop of content. Because once you die, you have to start over. There is no coming back. There's no opening a ticket. There's none of that. So if you die at level 60 and that was your only level 60, you got to start from scratch and re-level, re-gear, re-attune, everything. And it's kind of like progressing all over again. So it kind of promotes that unique playstyle of once you're done, you kind of got to start over completely. So hardcore can still stand in its own lane by virtue of that. It's the only version of WoW to have that sort of playstyle. Whereas like all of the other versions of WoW, yes, they are fundamentally and aesthetically different, but they all kind of answer to the same calling: level a tune, gear a tune, progress in the content. That's really the gist of it all, right? Um, so when Season of Discovery got announced, one, it was, even though it was on familiar setting, it was in a familiar setting, vanilla. You know, all of the vanilla stuff, Moan Core, Blackwing Lair, AQ. It was in a familiar setting. What wasn't familiar was all of the abilities and changes we were getting, right? And some of them were just straight up, copied and pasted from retail stuff or from future iterations of WoW, like Fingers of Frost and Avenger Shield and Warbringer, like all those things we've had, in WoW for some time now. But then some things are completely different, like Homunculi, like I'm trying to think what's not, like the Melee Hunter, like even though we have Survival now, but like that version of Melee Hunter, like it's not a thing. So make sure I'm going the right way. Black Orb. Okay, I think this is it. So it felt fresh because it was, and I think what was the icing on the cake was the very, very low entry point that SoD had at the start, right? Because one of the most daunting things about Classic was its leveling playstyle. Like people say, I used to always hear about when Vanilla was out and when before TBC came out, like Vanilla was all about, the journey leading up to and not necessarily the end game. I think people might disagree now that we've had SODs with our fourth iteration of Vanilla stuff. People might disagree now, but leveling was still a big bulk of your experience, right? So putting a leveling cap in and making the cost to entry very, very low, because the level cap was 25, like that's a very low cost to entry. I think that was genius. I think that was a very good decision on Blizzard's part, because if you're a player like me who was playing like retail, Mythic Plus, just Mythic Plus, I wasn't rating, just Mythic Plus, and I was main playing Wrath, you didn't really have a lot of time to completely invest yourself in a whole nother game, even if it was in familiar territory. But I could invest myself into leveling to level 25. You know what I mean? Like level 25 wasn't super high. Level 25 is honestly probably where most people either stop playing the game or switch to a new main or whatever you want to call it. So having the level caps be spread out, I think, was a really genius play style there. And then when SOD launched, I almost said COD, you can get that cash on the delivery. When SOD launched, farming and getting the runes was definitely the highlight, I think, of most people's play, because it was new. We were looking for new abilities to kind of warp ourselves and power ourselves up, even if a lot of those abilities were pretty familiar. I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to go over there. Let's keep it moving. And I think Blizzard just capitalized on that momentum. Like they were able to fill a void that really wasn't wasn't occupied. Like Wrath was basically running its course at that time. Like we were in ICC for a couple of weeks. Ruby Sanctum was out. Like hardcore people kind of migrated away from hardcore once the initial shiny new toy syndrome kind of got over, and it still has its cult following. It still has the people who are doing it, and like I said, it has that infinite feedback loop of if you die, you got to start over. Like if a person dies and they're just a hardcore player, now they have a whole brand new experience to do, and they can like reflect on their mistakes and kind of improve themselves. So hardcore still had its own little following, but for the most part, the like casual, the fringe fans kind of migrated away from it. So they were looking for something new, and SOD kind of filled that void by having its low entry cost, it improving on the traditional vanilla classes, giving us new abilities, making warlock tanks and mage healers and paladins actually able to, like, all that stuff was pretty exciting when it was announced. So I think phase one really knocked it out the park. And I think probably what's the icing on the cake and the cherry on top, or maybe you might look at it differently, but I think the icing is that Blizzard has been very, very vocal, communicative. Oh Jesus, I think I'm saying that wrong. But anyway, they've been very vocal in giving the community information and receiving the feedback and making changes on it, making good on their changes on it. And it almost feels like the people who are working on Cata Classics, so like Agrind and Nora and Tom Jones and all of those guys, like it kind of feels like they don't even work. Like it's like a separate entity from Wrath Classic and Retail, because we don't get this kind of communication from any other version of WoW, which is pretty sad, to be honest. So I think that's like the icing on the cake, is that we're getting communication. We're getting communication when things are happening. We don't have to really sit and wonder too long. Like we're getting balance fixes. We're getting bugs. Like things are actually happening, moving and shaking and moving forward in SoD, right? So all of those things culminate into just a really, really good game. Let's move on into phase 2, where, at least in my opinion, you kind of start to feel like, all right, what exactly are we doing here? And I said this before when SOD was first announced. I think I might have said it in one of my earlier streams where I was like reviewing the tanks and stuff. I feel like SOD is going to live or die on the speed of its phases, because here we are, like I said, in the third or fourth iteration of Vanilla. We had 2019, we had Season of Mastery, we had Hardcore, and now we have Season of Discovery, right? So we're in the fourth iteration of using Vanilla servers to kind of give people content. And while people are always going to have love and nostalgia for the Vanilla servers, I think at some point you got to ask yourself, all right, how do we keep this compelling? And I think they threw a lot of their ideas in the beginning of the phases, like everything plus the kitchen sink in with the phase 1. But the momentum, I feel like, has kind of waned a little bit, because once you start to like dive deep into SOD, you start to realize that it really is just classic with a couple of add-ons, if you will. Now, those add-ons make it feel pretty good, don't get me wrong. I'm still enjoying SOD, but once like I think the new toy syndrome is starting to wear off, and we're starting to kind of look around and say, okay, this really isn't that much different from Season of Mastery. It is different, but in practice it's not that much different, because we're still just playing vanilla stuff. Now, this is where I'll give Blizzard some credit. We're only in phase 2, right? We're only in phase 2, so things could wildly and drastically change for the next 2 phases and the end content phase, right? All of what I'm saying could go straight out the window if they release a new 40-man raid at the end of phase 4, something that we just never got, right? Like the Karazhan Crypts that was teased at BlizzCon, which I'm starting to suspect that might be the phase 4 raid. Like that might, like once we get past the regular stuff, Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, AQ, and Nax, I feel like the Karazhan Crypts is going to be somewhere in that level 60 bracket, and I think it's going to be pretty challenging. I think they're going to make it a 40-man. Right? That's at least what I'm kind of predicting. Right? Just like how I feel like in my last stream I said that I feel like Sunken Temple is going to be the level 50 bracket raid. I kind of feel like Karazhan Crypts is going to be the level 60 raid. It might not be the only one, but it will be that. And I also kind of in the back of my head feel like they're probably going to do some form of accelerated releasing of these phases. Kind of like what they did with Hardcore, where they just said, all right, once you hit 60, all of the raids are open. We're not phasing them out. We're not, blocking them off, time gating them. Once you hit 60 and you're attuned, go figure it out. I personally wouldn't mind that, but I know there's a lot of people in this community who would mind that. They want to have that feeling of progression. So like once Molten Core is out, like basically progression probably is going to start at 50. So if it's Sunken Temple, once Sunken Temple is out, we're going to gear up and progress into Sunken Temple in preparation for Molten Core. Because right now, we're only really collecting gear from Nomergon just to level. We're not really collecting it to progress in the next tier. So even if you don't get full Abyss, even if you get half of the actual items that's recommended to you on like Wowhead or like Icy Veins, you're really only collecting gear to level. The gear really doesn't truly matter. Because even let's say you got nothing. Let's say the flip is what's happening. Let's say you didn't get not one piece from Nomergon. You didn't make the crafted helm. You didn't do anything. Nothing's really gonna stop you from straight up going into the next quest zone once the leveling opens up and going to do Muradon or going to do Zul'Farrak, and like nothing's stopping you. You're just gonna go level again, and you're gonna go right into the next raid, and you're gonna try to get gear from there. So I think once level 50 happens, number one, it's going to be a 20-man, so that's going to be a little bit more exciting. I've seen varying arguments on why that's a good thing and why that's a bad thing. I personally like it. I like bigger raids. I like larger scoped raids. I think 10-man is cool for the convenience. Like, it's easy to jump in, jump out. Even if you're pugging, like, you can pug, a tank, 2 healers, and 6 DPS. That's light work, right? Might be a little bit harder to pug, 4 healers, another tank, and like 16 DPS. That might be different, you know what I mean? So, but I understand that like 20-man requires more coordination between people's schedules and stuff like that. So therefore it's not always looked upon as the best version of like the best size for a rating. But I like it. I like 20-man. I don't really like 10-man. But once level 50 happens, like I said before, that's where the work really begins, because now we're laying the foundation for getting gear to actually help us progress in the real raid, which is Molten Core. And yes, we're gonna replace all of that level 50 raid gear with Molten Core stuff and level 60 stuff and level 60 dungeon stuff. That part is still true, but it's still going to help lay the foundation, because I feel like you're still probably going to use some of that, some of that level 50 raid stuff in Molten Core, in the level 60 dungeon. You're still probably going to use some of that stuff. So it's going to have more weight. But right now, I think the biggest problem with Season of Discovery right now in the second phase is there's not much return on investment for your time and gearing right now, because all of your gear is just really for faster leveling and easier dungeon pulls and stuff like that. It's not really for progression. It's just to move along the pacing, which goes back to, and speaking of pacing, which goes back to my original point of how long are these phases going to last, right? You don't want to push the community too fast, because people are going to feel like they didn't get a chance to experience the content. Even though both raids were not only incredibly easy, they're incredibly short. Like, BFD was a 6-boss raid. Nomergon's a 6-boss raid. Like, they're not super long time investments. So a person who hasn't experienced the whole raid probably didn't put enough effort into it, because it's really not that long. Like, these raids are not that long. So that's just my own opinion. I might be a little bit elitist too. But anyway, what was I saying before? Yeah, your time investment doesn't feel as good right now, because what exactly are we gearing for, basically? And I think the real SoD really starts at phase 4. So I feel like, even though they haven't really done it with phase 2, they kind of fast tracked phase 1. I feel like they were on the brink of fast tracking phase 2, because we got the 1 to 39 experience increase a lot faster than I kind of thought they would release that, right? But we haven't really heard anything as of yet, and I think that's because they're still putting information out for Cataclysm. They're still putting information out for War Within. They're still doing these things. So, all right, this place is empty. So they kind of put SOD on the back burner, and we did just get like a large post explaining future plans and stuff like that. Like, we can't get a blue post about SOD every week, as much as some of us would want that. It just can't happen, right? You gotta pace yourself. So that's my current thoughts on SOD. Like, partly, like, I feel like it started off super strong. It filled the void when the void was empty with something new. But as we progress along, we're starting to realize that, like, like the shine is starting to wear off, and we're starting to look around like, okay, this is a lot of familiar territory. This is basically just classic with a little bit of retail stuff on it. And don't get me wrong, I love SOD. I've been having a blast on it, but I do look around now that I'm geared and I have most of the stuff that I could want out of Nomergon. I look around and I go to myself, all right, so what exactly else am I supposed to be doing? I got the gear to level. I'm gonna level pretty fast, but what exactly else is there? And there really isn't anything, right? You're just waiting for the next content phase. So that's the problem that I think SOD is going to have if they drag the phases too long. Even with the level 50 bracket, like the level 50 bracket, like I said, is going to start laying the foundations. But if it drags out too long, at some point we're gonna be right back where we are with phase 2, where we're looking around like, okay, we got the gear. Now what? Right? Now what? So that would be my advice to Blizzard. Like, make sure don't drag the phases out. And I think they did a pretty good job with the timing with phase 1. I don't think phase 1 lasted too long. One thing I will say about the phases is they definitely feel a lot, depending on how much you're raiding, because the raids are on the 3-day lockout, it can burn you quicker than a 7-day lockout raid will. But then again, a 7-day lockout raid also makes it feel like the phases are dragging out, because if you're doing something once a week versus doing something twice a week, you tend to burn yourself out a little bit more. So speaking of that, I would go even as far along to say that I think Blizzard should probably keep the 3-day cycle going, because one thing I think the 3-day cycle does that the 7-day cycle doesn't is it definitely promotes the leveling of more ads and the progression of more ads, and it honestly speeds it up. If I'm on an alt, not ads, what I say ads, alts. If I'm on an alt and I can do a raid twice a week, that's going to help to speed up the leveling process. That's going to, not leveling, but speed up the gearing process. It's going to make me want to play that alt a little bit more, which in turn makes me just want to play the game more. Like it's a lot more. It feels a lot better when it's on a 3-day lockout. Now the 7-day lockout isn't terrible. It does slow you down a little bit, but it makes your time inside of whatever raid is the main, content at the time, makes it feel more meaningful. So I won't shade the traditional lockouts too much, but it can slow down a phase depending on, and that's where people really, stand up and say, oh, I didn't even get a chance to experience the raid. I didn't get a chance to kill the last boss or the second to last boss. Those are just moving things too quick. Like with a 3-day lockout, you really can't die on that hill, because it's like, yo, bro, you have 2 times a week to do the end game content, and you're not. So it's not really, there's really no ground to stand on when that's happening, right? But if it's on a 7-day lockout, I could see the argument for that a little bit more. This course was long. All right. So I'm supposed to, Messner's Cage. All right, let's do that. But yeah, I could see that argument a little bit more when it's a 7-day lockout versus a 3-day lockout. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Do I even have Messner's Cage? I do not. Oh shit, Messner's Key's in there. Do I have a? Let me see. It is in there. I definitely have to go in there. And look at me earlier. I said, I'm definitely staying out of that, but it doesn't look like I have a choice. I have to go into not the Lions Den, but the Wolf Den. Time to go. It was telling me to put my pet on stay, but I don't have a pet. But I like the fact that it was warning the hunters and the locks, like, yo, make sure your pet doesn't just slide through these sleeping wargs. All right, Messner, let's get you out of here. All right, where we going? We going this way? We going this way. Messner is a mage. But that is really it that I want to talk about for today. I went over the Deathbringer talents, and I did the current status of SoD. I think I think it's good still. I think it's time will tell, and not only time, but time and Blizzard's choices will tell how it stands to test the time, because I still think people love it. People are enjoying it. It's still a fresh take on Classic. No matter how much we meme it, it's still a fresher take on Classic. And it's not over. It's only just reaching the midpoint, technically, and we don't even know that. Like, we're going into phase 3. There's phase 3, phase 4, and then whatever content update they have listed, on their roadmap thing. So there's still a lot more to be seen with Season of Discovery. I know a big criticism that Season of Discovery gets is there's not really any discovery or like feeling of wonder. Like, anything new, you basically just either follow a streamer who's like looking at it, or follow a Discord who's looking at it, and then you go on Wowhead and you kind of quote unquote discover it there. There's not really any like cool secrets to be found out. Like, we saw that with the phase 1, like, obviously because we didn't know where the runes came from, and there was no PTR, which I also think was a pretty dope move on Blizzard's part. But for the most part now, they're letting us data mine stuff, so we kind of already know what was kind of planned out for phase 3. And wait, what is this key? Not only that, hold up. Why is it telling me to go right here? Oh, this is for a different quest. That's why I'm tripping. All right. Yeah, not only are they letting us data mine stuff, it's all just being done for us. Like, there's no mystery. So I know that's a big proponent of criticism, because they did promote that as like one of the driving forces. Like, hey, it's going to be mystery and wonder, and you're going to be encouraged to go out and explore and all that stuff. And it's really not like that. Like, once it's posted on Wildhead, you basically follow the steps and you move on. Like, and that's not Blizzard's fault. That's just the nature of the beast when it comes to anything trying to be kept a secret from a community. Like you know it's going to be found out. Once it's found out, it's going to be shared. And, that's really the end of that. Like, there's really no keeping things from the internet. So I don't fault Blizzard for that. I mean, they could probably fix it. Like, I don't know. Like, they really can't, because once you find something, you can't stop people from telling the other person. Like, so it's not really that they can fix it. They can make it harder for the runes to be found, which on one hand would be great, but on another hand would be kind of annoying. Like, one hand it'd be great because it would promote that season of that, not season. It would promote that feeling of wonder. Or, I mean, you know what else they could do? They could like make multiple ways to discover a rune, right? So not everyone is going to the same web page to find out how to get a rune. Hold on. This is still, yeah. Like, they could be like, as an example, if you, for like the Dream State rune and Druids, right? Maybe one way is whatever the way is you get. I don't know actually how you get that rune, but one way is the traditional way. The next way is, following a quest chain. The next way is talking to a couple of random NPCs and then doing a little solo event. Like, there's ways to get around, like to kind of shake things up. But they're really, like, as of right now, all runes just basically have one way of getting them. People follow that on the Wildhead webpage or the Icy Veins webpage or the Discord, and then they move on. So I can understand like, there's no sense of discovery in Season of Discovery. I can kind of understand that narrative, but Blizzard has a lot of time to fix that, so only time will tell. All right, and I think that's it for the stream. I'm probably gonna stop here right before I rescue these boys. I'll probably stream again tomorrow and do more Cata leveling and probably talk about more Cata stuff tomorrow. Like, there's a couple things I want to touch on with Cataclysm, but that's really it for the video, guys. Y'all been great. I've been Soul, and I'm out. Peace.